Hurry up! How the Apache girl calmly faced her fate in the canyon. The wind whispered softly through the narrow cracks in the rock, carrying the dry scent of earth and sage. A small group moved slowly along a narrow path, carefully navigating the sharp stones and hidden crevices. Among them was a young Apache girl named Malia. She was no older than 12, yet there was a calmness about her that made her seem older than her years. Her dark eyes scanned every shadow, every movement of the canyon walls, as if she could feel the secrets hidden in the rocks themselves. Malia walked slightly ahead of her family, her small feet moving lightly over the uneven terrain. She had always been close to the land, learning from her mother and elders how to read the signs the earth gave. She noticed the faint trail of birds scattering ahead and the slight changes in the wind. These were small things, but in the canyon, small things could mean the difference between safety and danger. Today, something in the air felt different. The usual quiet of the morning was pierced by a strange tension, a feeling that someone, or something, was watching them. Her father, a strong man with weathered skin and a careful gait, moved beside the small group carrying their supplies. He was a man who rarely raised his voice, but today he seemed uneasy. Behind him, Malia's mother kept glancing back over her shoulder, wringing her hands. Even the younger children, carrying small bundles of water and food, sensed the unease and huddled close together. Malia, however, moved with quiet confidence. She did not panic, nor did she speak unnecessarily. Instead, she watched, listened, and felt the canyon around her, taking in everything so she could act when the moment came. "Keep moving," her father said finally, his voice low but urgent. "We must reach the shaded trail before the sun climbs too high. It will be dangerous to linger." He glanced at Malia, noticing her calm expression. He could not help but feel a small spark of pride in his daughter. While fear pressed on all of them, Malia seemed to hold it at bay, like a steady flame that refused to flicker in the wind. As they continued, the canyon grew narrower, the cliffs rising like silent giants on either side. The path became trickier, littered with loose stones that threatened to tumble underfoot. Malia paused for a moment to study the rocks and the marks of small animals that had passed that way. She noticed something that made her heart quicken, a set of footprints that did not belong to their group. They were fresh, pressed deep into the soft sand near a bend in the path. Someone had been there very recently. She did not call attention to it, but her mind raced. She had learned that sometimes the wisest action was to remain calm and act thoughtfully. Her mother sensed her daughter's pause and whispered, "Malia, what do you see?" Malia did not answer immediately. She pointed subtly to the footprints. "Someone is close," she said softly. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as if she were speaking of the weather rather than a potential threat. Her mother's eyes widened, and she quickly gathered the younger children closer. Malia's father frowned, scanning the path ahead. "Hurry up," he said, not in anger but out of concern, urging everyone to move faster along the canyon trail. The words hung in the air, sharp and pressing. In that moment, the urgency of their situation became clear to everyone. Malia led the way, her small body nimble and quick, finding the safest spots along the path where the rocks were steady. The group followed, their trust in her quiet confidence growing with every careful step. The canyon seemed alive around them, shadows stretching and moving as the sun climbed higher. The birds had grown silent now, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Every sound became sharper, the crack of a branch, the rustle of a lizard scurrying across the rocks, the distant echo of footsteps that did not belong to them. The fear in the adults was visible, but Malia's calm acted like a shield. Her steady gaze and measured movements reminded them that they could survive if they paid attention and stayed together. She guided them through the narrowest sections of the canyon, pointing out small ledges that offered better footing and patches of shade that provided a brief respite from the scorching sun. Every choice she made was precise, deliberate, and thoughtful. In her mind, panic was a tool that weakened people. Calmness, on the other hand, could turn a dangerous situation into one they could manage. Halfway along the canyon, they came to a point where the trail split into two paths. One path was wider but exposed to the sun, with loose rocks that could slide and cause injury. The other path was narrow and steep, climbing slightly before disappearing behind a jagged rock formation. Melia paused, analyzing both options. The wider path might allow faster movement, but the risk of slipping and falling was high. The narrow path was safer, hidden from view and less likely to be followed. She pointed silently toward the narrow trail, and her father nodded. They began to move carefully along it, each step measured, each hand placed firmly on the rock for balance. The group was quiet, the weight of the canyon pressing on them from all sides. Melia could feel her heart beat steadily in her chest, and she knew that her calmness was the only thing keeping the others from panicking. She glanced back at her mother and younger siblings, offering a small, reassuring smile. They returned it, finding comfort in her presence. The canyon was unforgiving, but with Melia leading them, they felt a spark of hope. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from above, the snapping of a small branch. Melia froze instantly, her eyes narrowing. She knew that someone was following them, moving carefully, trying not to be seen. Her body tensed, ready to act, but her voice remained calm as she instructed the group, "Stay close. Keep moving slowly, step by step." The adults obeyed, their fear tempered by the certainty in Melia's voice. Even the younger children held her hand tightly, trusting her guidance without question. The canyon grew steeper, the walls rising higher and closer together. Shadows shifted with the sun, creating patterns that made it difficult to see far ahead. Melia's senses were alert to every change, the wind brushing her face differently, the subtle sound of footsteps on loose gravel, the faint smell of smoke or dust in the air. She knew that the group was being watched and that they could not afford to make a mistake. Her calmness became a beacon, guiding everyone safely along the treacherous path. As they rounded a sharp bend, Melia's sharp eyes spotted a small cave entrance hidden behind a cluster of rocks. It was barely large enough for the group to squeeze through, but it would provide temporary shelter. She motioned for them to stop and carefully led them inside. The narrow space offered shade and a momentary reprieve from the tension of the canyon. Inside, they could hear the faint sounds of the pursuers outside, the crunch of gravel, the shifting of stones, the distant calls of someone scanning the area. Melia's father knelt beside the younger children, whispering words of reassurance. Her mother wiped her brow, grateful for the brief pause. Melia, however, did not relax. She crouched near the cave's entrance, her eyes scanning the narrow path they had just traveled. She traced the faint footprints in the dust, confirming that the group had indeed been followed. She studied the surrounding rocks and the shadows, calculating the next move. Her mind worked quickly, thinking several steps ahead, predicting what could happen next. Even in the face of danger, she remained calm, steady, and in control. Hours seemed to pass in silence as they waited, the sun climbing higher and the canyon growing hotter. Melia remained alert, but her calm presence soothed the group. She spoke sparingly, giving instructions only when necessary, her tone measured and confident. "We will continue when the sun is lower," she said quietly. "We must be careful. One wrong step can hurt someone." Her words carried weight, and the group obeyed without question. In that moment, it became clear that Melia's bravery was not loud or boastful. It was quiet, steady, and unyielding, the kind of courage that inspired others without demanding attention. As the day wore on, the group rested in the small cave, eating sparingly and drinking what little water they had. Melia remained near the entrance, watching the canyon with sharp eyes. She noticed subtle movements in the distance, shadows that did not belong, shapes that moved against the canyon walls. Her heart remained calm, her mind focused. She knew that the journey was far from over and that danger might return at any moment, but she was ready. She would guide her family through the canyon with the same steady courage that had brought them this far. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, Malia stood and stretched. Her small body moved with grace and confidence, a perfect contrast to the fear that still lingered in the hearts of the adults around her. "We will continue soon," she said quietly, her voice carrying both authority and reassurance. "Stay close, watch the rocks. Watch the shadows." The group nodded, trusting her implicitly. In that quiet, tense moment, the canyon seemed to hold its breath. The story of Malia, the young Apache girl who faced danger with calm courage, was just beginning. And though the canyon was wide, deep, and full of hidden dangers, she had already proven that bravery was not measured by size or strength, but by the quiet certainty of the heart. The sun was sinking lower behind the jagged cliffs, turning the canyon walls into a mix of orange and deep shadow. The air had cooled slightly, but the canyon was still full of tension. Malia stood at the entrance of the small cave, her dark eyes scanning the winding paths below. She could see faint movements far ahead, shadows shifting where they should not have been. The pursuers were still there, searching, and she knew that waiting too long could give them an advantage. Her father adjusted the packs on his shoulders and whispered, "We must move carefully. The canyon is narrow here, but it will lead us to safer ground if we stay alert." The adults around him nodded, but there was fear in their eyes. Malia, however, felt none of that panic. Her heart beat steadily, and her mind focused entirely on the path ahead. She had always known the canyon like the back of her hand, but today, every choice mattered more than ever. She motioned for the group to follow and led them out of the cave. The rocks were loose underfoot, and the path was narrow. One wrong step could cause a slip or a fall, but Malia moved as though the path belonged to her alone. She chose each step carefully, her small feet landing on stable stones, avoiding loose gravel that could slide and endanger the others. She held her hand out to guide the younger children, and they followed her without hesitation. As they moved, the canyon seemed to grow darker, the walls closing in like silent giants watching their every move. The adults whispered warnings to the children, but Malia's voice was steady above it all. "Stay close," she said quietly, "one step at a time. We will be safe if we pay attention." Her calmness was like a shield. The group felt their fear lessen, relying on her confidence to guide them. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from above, a small rock tumbling down the cliff, bouncing across the narrow path. Malia froze for a moment, her eyes following the rock as it rolled to a stop. It was not an accident. The pursuers were above them, trying to scare them, to force them into making a mistake. She bent down to examine the dust on the ground, noticing small footprints pressed into the sand near the edge. They were fresh, closer than before. The danger was real, but Malia did not panic. She simply nodded to her father and whispered, "We need to keep moving carefully." The path became steeper as they climbed, the rocks sharp and jagged beneath their feet. The younger children struggled, but Malia slowed her pace slightly to allow them to catch up. "Hold my hand," she said gently, "one step at a time. Don't look down." Her voice was soft but firm, and the children obeyed, trusting her completely. Even the adults followed her lead, amazed at how calm she remained while the canyon pressed in on all sides. As they rounded a bend, they saw that the path ahead split again. One side led to a wider area with loose rocks and the risk of slipping, while the other side was narrower but hidden from view. Malia studied both paths, weighing the dangers carefully. She pointed toward the narrow trail, and the group nodded. Step by step, they moved along the hidden path, careful not to make any sound. The canyon seemed alive, every rock and shadow a potential threat. The pursuers were not far behind. Malia could hear the faint sound of footsteps on loose gravel, the occasional snap of a branch. She led the group with steady movements, her eyes constantly scanning the rocks above and below. "Keep together," she said quietly. "Don't rush. Follow me exactly." The group obeyed, knowing that Melia's calm and careful approach was their best chance to stay safe. The canyon path grew even narrower, forcing the group to move single file. Melia was at the front, her small body moving swiftly but carefully. Behind her, the adults adjusted their pace, trying to stay balanced on the uneven stones. The younger children clung to her mother and father, their faces pale with fear, but their hands were steady in Melia's guidance. Every step was a test of courage, but the group felt stronger because of her. Suddenly, a sharp voice called from above. There they are! The pursuers had spotted them. The sound echoed off the canyon walls, bouncing back in a way that made the heart race. Melia did not panic. Instead, she bent down slightly, her eyes scanning the path ahead. "We must move quickly but carefully," she whispered. "Follow me, step by step." Her words were like an anchor, keeping everyone focused even as the sound of pursuit grew louder. A rock dislodged from above, tumbling down the cliff with a sharp crash. One of the children stumbled, and Melia was instantly there, steadying him with a firm hand. "Keep your balance," she said calmly. "Don't rush. We can do this." Her calm presence gave courage to the group. They moved as one, careful and deliberate, their fear balanced by Melia's unwavering confidence. As they climbed higher, the canyon walls narrowed even more. The air was cooler here, and the shadows stretched long across the rocks. Melia noticed a faint path leading to a small ledge above, a path that was barely visible but safe. She led the group toward it, stepping carefully on the stones that were steady. The children followed her lead, their small hands gripping the rocks for balance. Even the adults moved cautiously, trusting Melia's knowledge of the canyon. The ledge was narrow, but it offered a way to move higher without being easily seen. Melia paused for a moment to assess the distance. She noticed the pursuers below, their shadows stretching across the rocks. They were trying to anticipate the group's path, but Melia was already thinking several steps ahead. She guided them along the ledge slowly, one careful step at a time. "Keep together," she whispered. "Stay calm, watch the rocks." The canyon grew even more treacherous as they continued. Loose stones threatened to tumble, and the wind whistled through the narrow cracks, making it harder to hear anything else. Melia's senses were sharp. She noticed every sound, every shadow. She could feel the movement of the pursuers below, but she did not let it distract her. Her focus remained on the group, on every careful step that could save them from danger. At one point, a stone beneath Melia's foot shifted slightly. She froze, testing it before stepping fully. The group held their breath as she moved carefully, proving it safe before signaling for the others to follow. One by one, they moved across the ledge, each step deliberate and cautious. Melia's calm guidance turned what could have been panic into careful action. Fear remained, but it was controlled, and the group felt stronger because of her leadership. Hours seemed to pass in tense silence as they navigated the treacherous canyon paths. Melia's small body moved with grace and precision, guiding the group over every obstacle. Her father occasionally whispered encouragement, but most of the time he simply followed her lead, amazed at her courage. The younger children clung to her whenever possible, trusting her completely. Finally, they reached a part of the canyon where the walls opened slightly, and the path became less steep. Melia paused, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. She noticed faint footprints on the rocks below, evidence that the pursuers had followed closely. Her heart remained calm, but her mind raced with the next steps. She knew the group could not rest for long. "We will stop soon," she said quietly, "just for a moment. Then we continue. Be ready to move again." The group took a brief pause, crouched behind rocks and under shadows. Melia remained at the edge of the group, her eyes sharp and focused. The canyon seemed to breathe around them, the wind carrying faint sounds of pursuit. Melia's calm presence kept everyone steady. She handed water to the children, whispered instructions to the adults, and scanned the path ahead. Every moment was critical, but she did not panic. She understood that careful thinking and calm action were their only tools. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, Malia signaled for the group to continue. They moved slowly along the path, following her lead with complete trust. Every step was deliberate, every movement careful, but they were moving forward. The canyon was still dangerous, but with Malia guiding them, they had hope. The young Apache girl had shown them that bravery was not loud or reckless. It was quiet, steady, and thoughtful. And as they moved deeper into the canyon, the group understood that their safety depended on their calm, careful actions, and the courage of one small but fearless girl who refused to panic. The canyon had grown narrower now, almost like a giant's fist closing around the small group. The walls towered high above, casting deep shadows over the winding path. The air was cooler than earlier, but it carried a tense stillness, as if the canyon itself was holding its breath. Malia led her family carefully along the path, her small feet moving swiftly yet deliberately over the jagged stones. Every step required focus, and her eyes never left the path ahead. Behind her, her father carried the heavier supplies, glancing nervously at the cliffs above. Her mother held the youngest child close, whispering soft words to keep him calm. The older children clutched each other's hands, following Malia's careful lead. Despite their fear, they trusted her completely. Malia had proven herself time and again during this dangerous journey, and they knew that her calm and steady presence was their only hope. As they moved forward, Malia noticed that the path they were on came to a sudden stop. A sheer wall of rock blocked the way, leaving only a narrow ledge along the side. The ledge was steep and precarious, with a drop so deep that even a single misstep could be fatal. She studied the wall carefully. The ledge was thin, and the rocks above were loose in some places, but it was their only way forward. She turned to her father and whispered, "We must go along the ledge. It is narrow, but it is safer than turning back." Her father looked at the drop and swallowed hard. He hesitated for a moment, but then he nodded. He could see the confidence in Malia's eyes and the calm in her posture. She was small, yes, but she had something far stronger than size or strength. Her mind was sharp, and her courage was unshakable. Malia went first, carefully testing each step before committing her weight. She moved slowly and deliberately, placing her feet on the firmest spots and avoiding any loose stones. Her movements were precise, practiced, and confident. Behind her, the others followed, their steps tentative at first but gaining steadiness as they trusted her guidance. Every rock she touched seemed to echo her careful determination, a quiet rhythm that kept the group focused and calm. Halfway along the ledge, a small rock dislodged from above and tumbled down the canyon wall. The sound made the youngest child gasp and the adults stiffened in fear. Malia did not flinch. Instead, she crouched slightly, moving her body closer to the wall for balance. "Step carefully," she said softly, her voice firm but gentle. "Don't rush. One step at a time." Her calm direction steadied the group, and they continued along the ledge, each step deliberate and safe. As they moved, Malia could hear the faint sounds of their pursuers below. The crunch of gravel, the occasional snap of a branch, the soft whispers of voices carried up the canyon walls. She had no doubt that they were being followed, and the thought sharpened her focus. Panic would not help them, but careful thinking could save them. She adjusted her path slightly, leading the group toward a small overhang that provided some cover from the view of anyone below. The ledge grew narrower, and Malia knew that every step was now more dangerous than ever. She glanced back at her father, who was supporting the younger children as they moved. "We are almost there," she whispered. "Stay steady, trust me." Her father nodded, his face pale but resolute. Her mother's grip on the youngest child tightened, and the children followed Malia's lead without question. The canyon was unforgiving, but they were still moving, guided by the courage of one small girl who refused to panic. Suddenly, Malia noticed movement above them. A loose rock shifted slightly, and she realized that someone was looking down at them from the cliff above. The pursuers were trying to block their path, to force them into a mistake. She crouched lower, pressing her small body against the canyon wall. She scanned the ledge ahead, measuring every step, every rock, every shadow. There was only one way to continue safely, and she would have to lead the group along it carefully. "Stay close," she whispered again. "Do not rush. Follow me exactly." Her words were calm but full of authority. The group obeyed without hesitation. Malia took the first careful steps along the narrowest part of the ledge, testing each foot placement before moving. Behind her, her father and mother followed with steady caution, holding the children's hands tightly. The canyon walls pressed in from both sides, and the drop below was dizzying, but Malia's calm presence created a bubble of safety around the group. Halfway along the narrow ledge, a small stone shifted beneath her foot. She froze instantly, testing it before committing her weight. The group held their breath, watching as she adjusted her balance and moved carefully to solid ground. One by one, the others followed, learning from her precision and patience. The tension in the canyon was high, but Malia's calm, deliberate movements reminded everyone that careful thinking could overcome even the most dangerous situation. Suddenly, the ledge became even narrower, barely wide enough for one person to pass. The canyon walls were smooth here, leaving no handholds. Malia assessed the situation quickly. She realized that she would have to lead the children one by one, helping them across carefully while supporting the adults as best as she could. She took a deep breath, her small chest rising and falling steadily. Fear might be present, but she refused to let it control her actions. "Listen to me carefully," she whispered to the group. "We will go one by one, step slowly. Keep your hands on the rocks. Trust me and you will be safe." Her words were precise and confident, and the group nodded. The youngest children were first, guided carefully by their parents while Malia supported them from the front. She moved with careful attention, ensuring that every step was safe before encouraging the next person to move. The adults followed, their fear evident but tempered by Malia's unwavering calm. She reminded them to breathe slowly, to focus on each step, to trust the rocks beneath their feet. Her small body moved gracefully along the ledge, each motion calculated, each placement of her hands and feet deliberate. She had learned from the canyon itself how to move safely, and she used that knowledge now to guide her family through a path that would challenge even the most experienced climber. Halfway through this difficult section, a sudden noise startled the group. A small rock fell from above, bouncing off the ledge and landing with a sharp clatter. The children gasped and even the adults flinched. Malia did not panic. Instead, she crouched low, steadying herself and signaling the others to do the same. "Stay calm," she whispered. "We are okay. Keep moving carefully." Her voice was steady, soothing, and full of confidence. The group followed, trusting her completely. Finally, after what felt like hours, the narrow ledge widened slightly, offering a safer path. Malia paused to look back at the canyon they had crossed. The drop below was dizzying, the rocks sharp and unforgiving, but they had made it safely. The group breathed sighs of relief, though they remained cautious, knowing the danger was not yet over. Malia's father knelt beside the children, praising their courage. Malia's mother hugged the youngest child, whispering words of thanks, but Malia did not relax. She knew that the pursuers were still below, searching for them. She scanned the canyon carefully, her eyes noticing faint tracks and shadows. "We must keep moving," she said quietly. "The danger is not gone yet, but we are strong and we are together." Her words inspired courage in the group. They trusted her completely, knowing that her calm thinking and careful actions had kept them safe so far. As they continued along the safer path, Malia noticed a small hidden trail that led to a higher plateau. It was narrow and hidden, but it would give them a chance to escape further from the canyon below. She motioned for the group to follow and led them toward the hidden path. Step by step, they moved carefully, guided by Malia's knowledge and courage. The canyon still loomed around them, but with each movement, they felt more confident and more secure. Finally, they reached the top of the plateau. From here, they could see the canyon stretching out below them, the narrow ledges and winding paths they had traversed. Malia's heart was steady, her mind focused on the next step. The group looked at her with gratitude and admiration. The youngest children clung to her hands, and even the adults looked at her with pride. She had led them through the most dangerous part of the canyon with careful thinking, calm courage, and precise action. For the first time that day, the group allowed themselves to rest briefly. They drank water, ate small pieces of food, and caught their breath. Malia sat slightly apart, her eyes still scanning the canyon below. She knew the danger was not gone, but she also knew that careful planning, courage, and calm thinking had carried them this far. Her bravery was quiet, steady, and unshakable, the kind of courage that inspired others to be brave as well. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and deep orange, Malia whispered softly to the group, "We are safe for now, but we must remain ready. One step at a time, we will continue our journey." The group nodded, trusting her completely. The canyon was still wide, deep, and full of hidden dangers, but Malia had shown them that courage, calm thinking, and careful action could overcome even the most challenging obstacles. The canyon grew even steeper as the sun sank lower, casting long, dark shadows across the jagged walls. The air was cooler now, but it carried a tense stillness, as if the canyon itself was holding its breath. Malia led her family carefully along the narrow path, every step deliberate, every movement precise. She had guided them through the most dangerous parts of the canyon, but she knew the final challenge was still ahead. The path before them narrowed to a thin ledge along a towering rock face. Below, the canyon dropped sharply, the jagged rocks catching the last rays of sunlight. Malia crouched slightly, testing the stones beneath her feet. Each one had to hold her weight. One misstep and the fall could be fatal. Her heart remained steady, but her mind worked quickly, calculating the safest route for the group. Her father held the younger children close, scanning the canyon below nervously. "Are you sure this is safe?" he whispered. Malia glanced back at him and nodded. "Yes," she said firmly. "Step carefully, keep your hands on the wall, follow me." Her calm tone reassured him, and he guided the children carefully, their small hands gripping the rocks tightly. Even the adults followed her lead, trusting her judgment completely. As they moved along the ledge, a small rock dislodged above them and tumbled down the cliffside. The sound echoed through the canyon like a warning drum. The children gasped, and one of the adults stumbled slightly. Malia was instantly there, steadying him with a firm hand. "Stay calm," she said softly. "We are okay. Watch your step." One step at a time. Her presence was like a steady anchor, keeping everyone focused despite the danger around them. Halfway along the ledge, the path became even narrower, forcing the group to move single file. The canyon walls pressed in on both sides, smooth and unforgiving. Malia assessed the situation quickly. There was no room for mistakes. She knew the pursuers might still be below, watching and waiting for an opportunity to scare them further. The only way forward was careful, calculated movement. "Listen to me," Malia whispered. "We will go slowly. Each step must be sure. Do not rush. Trust the rocks. Trust me." Her words were calm but filled with authority. The group obeyed without hesitation. The younger children followed her lead, gripping her hand whenever possible. The adults moved cautiously behind them, their trust in Malia unwavering. Suddenly, a larger rock dislodged from above, tumbling down the cliffside with a sharp crash. The children cried out, and one of the adults froze, unsure of how to move. Malia crouched low, pressing her body against the canyon wall for safety. "Step back carefully," she said. "Move slowly, we are fine, one step at a time." Her calm, steady voice reassured everyone. They adjusted their positions, avoiding the falling rocks, and continued along the ledge. As they rounded a bend, the path became even more treacherous. Loose stones littered the narrow trail, and the canyon walls had no handholds. Malia stopped for a moment, her sharp eyes scanning the area. She noticed a small crevice ahead that could serve as a temporary resting spot, hidden from view. She motioned for the group to move carefully toward it. "We will rest briefly here," she whispered. "Stay close and stay quiet." The group crouched in the small crevice, taking a moment to catch their breath. The youngest children clung to their parents, still shaken from the narrow ledge. Malia's father knelt beside them, whispering words of encouragement. Her mother hugged the youngest child tightly, grateful for the brief pause. Malia, however, remained alert. Her eyes scanned the canyon, noting faint tracks and shadows that suggested the pursuers were still below. She knew they could not linger for long. After a few minutes, Malia motioned for the group to continue. The narrow path led upward now, twisting around a large rock formation. It would take them closer to the canyon rim, where they could finally find safety. The climb was difficult, and the ledge was so narrow that they had to move slowly, one step at a time. Malia led the way, testing each stone before placing her full weight on it. The others followed carefully, mimicking her precise movements. Halfway up, a sudden gust of wind swept through the canyon, rattling loose stones and making the ledge slippery. The youngest child lost balance and began to stumble. Malia was immediately there, steadying him with one hand while holding onto the rock wall with the other. "It's okay," she whispered. "Stay calm, you are safe, watch my steps." Her calm reassurance steadied him, and he regained his balance. The adults moved carefully behind her, encouraged by her bravery and composure. The climb became even more difficult as the ledge narrowed further. Malia realized that they were approaching the most dangerous part of the canyon yet. Below, the drop was sharp, and there was no margin for error. She crouched low, her sharp eyes scanning every inch of the path ahead. She knew the group would have to trust her completely to make it safely. "We must be careful here," she said quietly. "Follow my steps exactly, one by one." The group moved slowly, following her instructions. Each person tested the rocks before stepping, using their hands on the wall for balance. Malia's calm, steady guidance kept their focus sharp, preventing panic from taking over. The canyon seemed to echo every sound. The shifting of stones, the soft footfalls, the occasional whisper of encouragement. Every movement had to be precise, and Malia ensured it was. Suddenly, a larger rock shifted beneath the ledge. Malia froze instantly, analyzing the situation. She realized that if the group continued without caution, someone could fall. Acting quickly, she guided the adults to hold their position while she helped the children move carefully across the most dangerous section. Step by step, she led them, using her small but steady hands to stabilize them when needed. Her father and mother followed, trusting her completely. The adults moved cautiously, ensuring the younger children stayed safe. Malia's quick thinking and bravery kept everyone balanced and focused. The narrow ledge was still dangerous, but with each careful step, they moved closer to the safety of the plateau above. Finally, after what felt like hours of careful movement, the group reached a wider section of the path. The rocks were more stable, and there was space to rest. Malia turned to look back at the canyon below. The narrow ledges and winding paths they had crossed seemed almost impossible in hindsight. She felt a small surge of pride, knowing that her calm thinking and careful action had brought the group safely through one of the most dangerous sections of the canyon. The group took a brief rest, drinking water and catching their breath. Malia's calm presence reassured everyone. Even the youngest children, still pale from fear, felt stronger because of her guidance. Her father whispered words of gratitude, and her mother hugged the youngest child, tears of relief in her eyes. Malia, however, did not relax completely. She knew the danger was not over, and the canyon still held challenges ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the canyon walls turned a deep shade of orange, and shadows stretched long across the rocks. Malia stood at the edge of the wider path, scanning the canyon carefully. She noticed faint footprints below, evidence that the pursuers had followed closely. Her heart remained calm, but her mind calculated the next steps. They needed to move again before darkness fell completely. "Stay close," she whispered to the group. "The path ahead is safe, but we must not stop for long. One step at a time. Trust me." The group nodded, understanding the importance of her words. Step by step, they continued along the wider path, guided by Malia's steady presence. Every movement was deliberate, every step calculated, and every member of the group felt stronger because of her leadership. Finally, they reached a hidden trail that led to a small plateau above the canyon floor. From here, they could see the canyon stretching below, the narrow ledges they had crossed, and the winding path that had challenged them so greatly. Malia looked at the group and smiled faintly. They were safe for now, but she knew that careful thinking, courage, and trust in one another would continue to guide them through whatever challenges remained. The youngest children clung to her hands, and the adults looked at her with admiration and gratitude. The canyon had been treacherous, but Malia had led them with quiet bravery, precise thinking, and calm determination. She had proven that courage was not loud or reckless. It was steady, thoughtful, and inspiring. As darkness began to settle over the canyon, the group made camp on the plateau. They ate small portions of food, drank water, and shared quiet words of encouragement. Malia remained alert, scanning the canyon below for any signs of danger. She knew that their journey was not yet complete, but she also knew that they had overcome one of the most difficult challenges they would face. For the first time that day, the group allowed themselves to breathe deeply. The canyon had tested their courage, their patience, and their trust in one another. Malia had guided them through every obstacle with calm precision, showing that even the smallest person could have the greatest courage. As the stars began to twinkle above, she whispered softly to the group, "We are safe for now, but we must stay ready. One step at a time, we will continue our journey." The shadows of the cliffs stretched long across the plateau, and the stars were beginning to twinkle faintly in the evening sky. The air was cool, carrying the scent of sage and dry earth. Malia stood at the edge of the plateau, her eyes scanning the canyon below. The narrow ledges, jagged rocks, and winding paths they had traversed looked impossibly dangerous from this height. She felt a small, quiet pride. Every careful step, every measured movement, every calm decision had brought them this far. Her family gathered behind her, still catching their breath from the day's journey. Her father knelt beside the younger children, smoothing their hair and whispering words of encouragement. Her mother held the youngest child tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. Even the older children were quiet, reflecting on the narrow ledges and sharp cliffs they had crossed with Malia's guidance. The canyon had tested them all, but it had also taught them something important, that calm thinking, careful planning, and courage could overcome even the most frightening challenges. Malia turned to look at her family, her dark eyes calm and steady. "We are safe for now," she said softly. "The canyon is still wide and deep, but we have learned how to move carefully, how to trust each other, and how to stay calm. That is what will keep us safe." Her voice was quiet, but it carried the authority of someone who had faced danger and emerged stronger. The group nodded, understanding the truth in her words. The youngest children clung to her hands, still pale from fear but feeling a little braver because of her guidance. The adults looked at her with admiration, realizing that the small girl had led them through one of the most dangerous situations of their lives. Her courage had not been loud or boastful, but quiet and steady, like a candle that does not flicker even in the strongest wind. It was this quiet bravery that had inspired them all to remain calm and focused, even when the canyon seemed determined to overwhelm them. As night fell, the group set up a small camp on the plateau. They shared what little food they had, drank water, and wrapped themselves in blankets against the cool evening air. The canyon was silent now, except for the occasional rustle of the wind through the rocks. Malia remained alert, her eyes scanning the edges of the plateau, watching for any signs of danger. She knew that while they were safer here, the journey was not yet complete. They would need to continue in the morning, but for now they had a moment to rest, reflect, and gather their strength. Her father knelt beside her and spoke quietly. "Malia, you have been so brave today. I don't know what we would have done without you. You kept us all safe." Malia looked up at him, her calm expression unwavering. "I only did what I had to," she said softly. "We must all stay careful. Courage is not just one person, it is all of us together. We must watch, listen, and trust each other." Her words were wise beyond her years, and her father felt a deep sense of respect for his daughter. Her mother hugged her tightly, holding the youngest child close. "You are so strong, Malia," she whispered. "Not just strong in body, but strong in your heart and mind. You have taught us all what it means to be brave." Malia's eyes softened, and she gave a small smile. She did not feel proud in the way adults often did, but she felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had helped her family survive. The canyon had been dangerous, but they had faced it together, and they had overcome it. As the night grew darker, the group lay down to rest under the stars. The canyon seemed peaceful now, its previous dangers hidden by the shadows of night. Malia remained awake for a while, her mind reflecting on the day's events. She thought about the narrow ledges, the sharp cliffs, and the hidden paths they had crossed. She remembered the fear in the eyes of her younger siblings and the tension in her parents' faces. She had felt fear too, of course, but she had learned to channel it into careful thinking and steady action. The canyon had taught her many lessons. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She had learned that calmness could guide others through danger more effectively than panic. And she had learned that knowledge of the land, careful observation, and careful planning could turn a situation that seemed impossible into one that could be managed safely. These lessons were not just for survival, they were lessons for life, for every challenge that might come their way. The next morning, the canyon was bathed in soft golden light. Malia led her family down the hidden trail, step by step, careful as ever. The narrow ledges they had crossed the day before now seemed less frightening in the morning light, but she did not underestimate them. Each step required attention, each movement required care. The younger children clung to her hands, and the adults followed closely behind. Together they moved through the canyon, one careful step at a time, guided by Malia's calm presence. By midday, they reached a wide, open area where the canyon finally opened into a valley. The rocks were smoother here, the path more stable, and the air carried the scent of water and grass. The group paused, taking in the relief of safer terrain. The youngest children laughed quietly, feeling free from the fear that had held them for so long. The adults smiled, their faces showing a mixture of relief and pride. They had survived the canyon, and they had done it together, led by a girl whose courage had guided them every step of the way. Malia's father knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have shown us what it means to be brave," he said softly. "Not just brave for yourself, but brave for all of us. You have been our guide, our protector, and our courage when we could not find it ourselves." Malia looked up at him, her calm expression still steady. "I only did what I had to," she said. "We all have courage inside us, I just helped us find it together." Her words were humble, yet they carried the truth of the day's journey. Her mother held her hand, smiling warmly. "You are a leader, Malia," she said. "Your calm heart and steady mind have guided us through one of the most dangerous places we have ever faced. We will never forget this day, or the lessons you have taught us." Malia smiled faintly, feeling the quiet pride of accomplishment. She did not need praise to know she had done what was necessary. The canyon had tested them all, and they had emerged stronger, braver, and more united than before. The group continued through the valley, moving toward home. The sun climbed higher, warming their backs and filling the valley with light. Malia's small hand held the youngest child, tightly, and the older children followed closely. Her parents walked behind, their trust in her unwavering. Every step forward was a reminder of the courage, patience, and careful planning that had carried them safely through the canyon. As they reached the edge of the valley, Malia looked back at the canyon. The jagged cliffs and narrow ledges seemed less frightening now, bathed in the golden sunlight. She knew the canyon would always be a place of challenge, a place that tested courage and careful thinking. But she also knew that they had faced it together and had survived. The canyon had taught them lessons they would carry forever, lessons about bravery, calmness, trust, and the power of acting carefully even in the face of danger. When they finally reached their village, word of Malia's bravery spread quickly. The elders gathered, listening to the story of how a young girl had guided her family through the treacherous canyon. They spoke of her calm courage, her careful thinking, and the way she had inspired everyone to stay steady in the face of fear. Malia did not boast or seek attention. She simply shared the lessons she had learned, helping the younger children understand that courage was not about being fearless, but about acting wisely even when afraid. Her story became a quiet legend among her people. They spoke of the girl who faced the canyon with calm determination, who guided her family safely along narrow ledges and treacherous paths, and who showed that bravery could be quiet, steady, and thoughtful. Malia's courage became a lesson for everyone, young and old alike, reminding them that careful thinking, patience, and calmness could overcome even the most dangerous challenges. As the days passed, Malia continued to lead and teach. She guided younger children along safe paths, showing them how to move carefully, how to observe the land, and how to trust their instincts. She reminded them that courage was not just a feeling but a choice to act wisely, to stay calm, and to protect those around you. Her family continued to grow stronger, more confident, and more united because of the lessons she had shared. Years later, Malia would still walk the canyon paths, her small hands steady, her mind focused, and her heart calm. She would remember the day she had led her family through the canyon, the narrow ledges, the sharp cliffs, and the shadows that had tested them all. But she would also remember the trust, the courage, and the quiet strength that had guided them safely through. The canyon had been dangerous, but it had also been a teacher, and Malia had been its most careful and courageous student.